Hi again, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. I am Dan Scott. It is our monthly Ask the AD session with Jason Donnelly, who is here, and his special guest with us this week is a guy who told me just a few moments before we went on the air that today is just another day.
Yeah, right.
Pierre Curtis is joining us. We're recording this on Tuesday morning, and Tuesday night, Pierre makes his head coaching debut with the Furman women here at Timmons Arena against Asheville.
And when we were
so I ain't buying what you're selling, man.
I'm trying to make it that way right now.
well, we scheduled this about a month ago, and I reached out to Pierre and said, "Does this work for you?" And he says, "Man, I'm ready." He goes, "I'm ready to go. I just got to be ready for the shoot around." But we wanted to do it strategically because this is our first opportunity to really introduce Pierre to the public. And what we wanted to share with you is that this is our monthly check-in where Dan and I have an opportunity to have a conversation, take questions, listen to the fan base, talk about things that are going on in Furman Athletics. But we always have a special guest, and we are honored to have you on the debut of your first game. But how are you feeling?
No, first I appreciate you guys having me. I'm fine. I'm excited. A little nervous, but I told the girls this morning when we had shoot around, I was like, it's okay to be nervous, right? Scared is different, but nervous it's okay. And then when the ball goes up, just like when I play basketball, when the ball tips, I'll be fine, and the girls should be too. So, I'll try to make it, like I told him, just try to make it seem like it's a normal day. But my daughter's here, my family's here that's from out of town, and so I go home, and it's not normal at all right now. So we'll see.
You got to come to work to get a little bit of rest, right?
I'm in my office hiding.
Well, the getting nervous thing, there's a great story. I don't know if you've heard this, but about the legendary Bill Russell when he played for the Boston Celtics and all of those great teams. And, Russell's one of the greatest ever.
For sure.
But he still got so nervous, he got butterflies, that he literally threw up before every game. And it got to a point that it became such a superstition for Red Auerbach that at one game, Russell hadn't thrown up, and he wouldn't send the team out of the locker room until he went and did that. So,
yeah, I'm not trying to make that it. Man.
But my point is, if the great ones
for sure.
still had butterflies.
No, and if you're not nervous, then it's the type of game you're about to play in is not that serious, right? So, for me, it's always nerves no matter what, and then once the ball's tipped, everything's good to go.
And I think part of your personality is you're very humble and you're very open, which is one of the reasons I think you relate really well to the team and to your peers and recruits. But it's totally normal to feel this way. But the reality is the moment the ball does go up, it's all back to what it's going to be. And just talk about, as you're thinking about that, a lot of this is just processing. All right, I'm out there. I'm now in charge of the operation. But a lot of the things that we've seen, we've got to see a lot of the energy, a lot of the enjoyment with the team. But just talk about what your expectations are when you're what will the fan base see differently when you're coaching and being the head coach of the team?
No, I think they'll see my passion really come out, like my passion for the game. I'm very energetic. Some would say demonstrative at times, but I never stop moving. I pace a lot, but just a lot of energy, passion. Always talking to my girls. I told the refs joked at our scrimmages that they can't tell me to sit down now because I'm there. As an assistant coach, I got told to sit down about 3 or 4 times a game, and now they can't tell me that now. So that's the beauty of it. But
they probably still could tell you, but you're not going to like it.
Yeah, I won't like the way they tell me to sit down this time, right?
It's funny talking about the nerves and all of that stuff. You said when the ball goes up and the game starts. That was when you were a player.
Right.
Now you're the head coach. So there's still some things that you don't have control over now. It's still dependent upon those young ladies who are going to be on the floor.
For sure. I was the same way as an assistant, though. So a little nervous, and then when the ball went up, it's just basketball.
Adrenaline
it's a game,
took over, and it was
right. Your preparation takes over, and that's why I tell them your preparation should take over. You just go play hard, and you prepare for this moment. So just stay in the moment, right?
Well, from my perspective, so many of the great things about Furman women's basketball, things that you've worked on with Jackie for over a decade, the culture, the things that you focus on around the program are very much the same.
Right.
I think the biggest change that our fan base can expect to see is a stylistic change in terms of the way you're going to go about playing. And want to share some of your philosophies just in terms of how you see the team using the personnel, the style of play that you think would be a little bit different just based on what you're going to be putting in.
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot more quick hitters. I'm not really I like to run like NBA style type plays, so it's not really a lot of A to B to C to D. I like to put kids in their in spots and let them make the reads and make decisions. And sometimes you're going to see some quick shots, but I trust that they've worked on those shots, and we've done a lot of reps in those plays, and then defensively. I can't give that away all the way, but
that's good. You don't have to.
Defensively, we're gonna you'll see some changes, right? We're gonna a little bit more aggressive on certain people. We're gonna get after a little bit. I don't want the game brought to us. I want to take the game to people. So you'll see a little bit more of that this year. But again, these kids, they're just playing hard. They're having. I told them the main thing is just remember why you started playing basketball. Like not when you were in high school and you were trying to get a college scholarship. Just remember why you started when you were 7 years old. Yeah. That's what I remember. I played because it was fun. So go out there and have fun. Yeah. Right? Be disciplined and have fun.
But a lot of times the freedom to do that comes from the culture set by the head coach. Right. In other words, if you don't allow a culture in which they can have fun, it's easy to say but almost impossible to do.
Right. No, but I have fun too, so that's why I try to have as much fun doing this. It's not a job for me. It's what I wanted to do. I enjoy getting up every day, game planning, and I'm out there jumping around with them in practice too. So I tell my staff, if you bring the energy and you see that it's I don't want to call it loose. We're still disciplined, but it's a little bit looser of an environment. Then they can be that way too. And one of the first things I told them in my first meeting was be yourself. Mm-hmm. Like show who you truly are. Right, be respectful, but be yourself. Have fun. Mm-hmm. Like let people see your real personality. If you get an and one and you want to scream and one, it's okay. Like be who you are, and they love that so far. They've loved that change.
Well, I think one of the things that you and Jackie had such a great synergy, and I don't think everyone got to see this. I think the team got to see it, and I could certainly see it when I was around the team, particularly in the locker room. Was that you have your personality, right. And you have a fun, loving personality right. in terms of how you engage with the team, and I think that's really good advice because it's very true. You're going to be your best coach. They're going to be their best selves if they are true to themselves. Right. So speaking of the team, talk about it's nice to have your roster, and it's nice to have for the most part health. You're not entirely healthy,
right?
But you want to talk about the team and just some expectations around the people that are going to be playing from the lead positions,
right? No, obviously got to start with Tate Walters, her being back. She was a little nicked up this past week, but she practiced the last 2 days, so we expect her to go tonight.
And she's also conference,
kid, man. Yeah. She preseason all conference. She pretty much is the heart and soul of our team. I mean, she has a lot of energy. She's a winner, and people just follow her. And then obviously we have Jada Session, who I expect to make a big jump from sophomore to junior year. She was in the gym working hard. She's starting to be a lot more consistent in her effort and her ability to finish the basketball. Nevaeh Henley's back from an ACL, so we just, after an all freshman year before getting hurt, and then Sydney James is healthy. She wasn't healthy last year. She played pretty much the whole year with different injuries. Mm-hmm. Obviously, she didn't even finish the year out with us because she had a stress fracture, but she's been really good. So I just. And those are the heavy hitters that everyone would know, right? Obviously, Jalen Acker is not playing right now. She'll be out to, I think she has a couple more weeks before she can play another all-freshman team. But I really think when we get this team healthy, as healthy as we're going to be this year, I think we have a chance. Obviously, Nia Johnson was a transfer we had, and she was expected to play a big role for us. She was a different type of downhill guard than we've had before. Unfortunately, she tore ACL in our scrimmage, so it hurts not having her. But I think we have enough pieces to be competitive and really go out there and compete night in and night out.
When you have a player who transfers in, so she's trying to build relationships, and then you have this injury happen that takes her out for the entire year. How do you keep her engaged, and how do you keep her engaged with her new teammates who she's still trying to form relationships with?
Right. Well, one, from my perspective, I just love on her as much as I can, right? Let her know that she's still a part of the team no matter if she's out there playing or not. She did it right before hoops night. So she was like, Coach, do I have to come to hoops night? I'm like, yo, you have to enjoy this. This is for you. Media day, we had that talk. But I think the big thing for us is the culture of our team. I don't have to make sure that they involve her in everything. We're a family, and everyone says that, but when you really get around our crew and my staff and the players, you really see that's what we're about. And it's no different. We were like that last year. We were like that the year before. That's something I did learn from Jackie, is just a part of just making sure that it's more than basketball, right, with your team and with your staff, and that's how I am.
Yeah, one of the big things in women's basketball was the game yesterday, which I thought got great attention. This was
Right.
South Carolina, Notre Dame. Ironically, Jackie was there along with Rob Carson,
Right.
supporting ACC. But talk a little bit about the platform that you see with women's basketball. I thought that was a great move, play the game in Paris and
Right.
get it on national TV in the middle of the day, first day of college basketball.
Right.
What are some of the things you're seeing around women's basketball in general?
No, I think just the excitement around the game is just it's crazy right now. Everybody is getting a lot more attention. You're getting to see that it's not as different as you would think it is from the men's game. These kids are athletic. They have you saw the move that Fulwali put on for South Carolina. That I haven't seen a guy do that. So there's more eyes on it, and people are more excited about the game. The fans are passionate. But you talk about that game in Paris, and then Colorado beats number 1 LSU last night, and me and Coach, because obviously Coach Ashley went to LSU, but we're watching it, we're like, oh my God, this is unreal. So there's great basketball on this side, and there's a lot better teams. Before it used to be about 5 teams that were really good, and now the parity in the game is crazy.
And we saw that this past year. I mean, we had, hosting the NCAAs, we had record attendance.
Right.
South Carolina games were sold out, but for us to be able to host both regionals and to see LSU, South Carolina advance out of that region in
Right.
terms of what they're doing, but it wasn't just the teams at the top. I mean, there was depth, and if you got into all the teams, and right now the format is such that you get to play a regional game first,
Right.
and then you advance into this Sweet 16. But I mean, if you look at the depth of teams that are there, all of those teams have a chance to win a national championship. Now there's the elite,
Right.
the best of the best. But I think college women's basketball right now is probably as strong as it's ever been.
It is, and you just see the fans. The fans turn out. Iowa played a game outside in the football stadium about 2-3 weeks ago, and it was sold out.
Yeah.
They played DePaul. It was sold out, and they get more fans than NBA games. Like the women's basketball, it's beautiful basketball, and the support for it right now is at an all-time high.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, let's go back to the day that you got hired.
Right.
Looking ahead to today, did you think today was ever going to get here, or has it gotten here much too quickly? Would you like to have had more time to prepare?
Well, it got here way faster than I expected. I will say that. I mean, it does feel like 2 days ago I got the job, right?
Yeah.
But I think we're prepared. I've watched someone do it at a high level. I have really good mentors outside of Jackie, and I ask questions. I'm never too big or to ask questions. Say I don't know, right? How do you do this? Like, and I don't try to do it all by myself. I have a good staff, but I have good mentors that are very successful in this business. So at one point I was like, do I have enough in? Am I behind putting certain things in? And it was Kenny Brooks at Virginia Tech. He was like, man, I've been doing this for 23 years. I've been asking myself the same question every year.
Yeah.
It made me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
So I'm very open and honest about who I am and what I'm comfortable with, and if I'm not comfortable with it, I ask somebody for advice, and that's how it works out for me.
Yeah. And I think that's one of your best traits. Like we've really enjoyed from our perspective administratively. We've been watching you ask those questions. We've been watching you engage our coaches. One thing I want to give a compliment to Pierre and the team is they've been everywhere. So like it's funny. You see Pierre, he's in the gym, he's just watching people, he's going to games, and it's not credit. It's just he is so immersed in our culture and supporting everyone, and your team has been everywhere, which we love. And I think that says a great thing about your culture and your leadership of what you're trying to accomplish. But one of the things we noticed, which was not to say not anticipated, but at the point where we announced Pierre as the head coach, we announced Pierre as the head coach because this is the right decision, it's the right person, the right time. But the response was off the charts, meaning that I wasn't aware of how much of a celebrity you are in women's basketball, because it wasn't just the internal response. Like our university was excited, our team was excited, our fan base was excited, but this went well past that. But just some thoughts on that, just in terms of how the support you've gotten for this role.
I really appreciate it. Just from like here at Furman, in the women's basketball community, I pride myself on just being a genuine person, right? What you see is what you get with me, and I think in doing that, and I talk to everyone. I'm very open in helping anyone that needs help. So I think with that, it was a genuine response to seeing me, accomplish something that we all want to accomplish, right? So they saw someone that, I guess you said, did it. I don't say did it my own way, but did it a different way, and still accomplished the dream that we all want. And I think that's why the support was there. But I mean, even today, I'm getting text messages galore, and I'm, tweets and DMs, and I just appreciate it all. I will say that I appreciate all the support. I'm getting emails from people at Furman. I'm like, I love it, right?
Yeah.
Well, what it does, it speaks to the person that you are more than the coach. And I don't want to open a can of worms here, but I have to ask you this about the overall culture of women's basketball, because when I first started covering collegiate women's basketball going back right around 20 years ago, there was a significant movement among the female head coaches that they didn't believe that male coaches should be coaching women's basketball as a head coach.
Right.
I don't know if that's the same now,
right.
But just to hear that people all around college basketball are
right.
feeling that way about you, that speaks highly about you.
No, and I appreciate that. I think some of it too is I worked for Jackie Carson, who is also she's pretty big time in this profession, right? So they loved Jackie, and then that's how I met him. And then they saw that, hey, I'm a pretty solid stand up person too, so that helped as well. I think now that they I think it is a good idea at times. It's professional women basketball players that want to come back and coach, and they should get that opportunity, right? They played it at a high level, and they should get the opportunity to coach in their sport. But at the same time, everybody wants to just hire the right person, right? Right. And so whoever the right person is for the job, people are going to get behind that, right? Mm-hmm. But obviously, as assistants, as you can tell, my hosts, I don't have a male on my staff. I have a all-female staff, and they all played at a pretty high level, right? So I think giving my players role models that did what they wanted to do and did what they're doing was important for me. I didn't want to go just get a new staff and hire a bunch of males. No, I need role models for my girls, and that's important to me.
Yep. Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of progress when it comes to gender and sports and coaches, because I think we're starting to see it the other way, that you're seeing females coaching male sports.
Right.
And I look at someone like a Dawn Staley and say, the Sixers job came open this past summer. I mean, Dawn's a legit candidate,
right?
And the job she has now might be a better job than that job. And that sounds crazy talking about an NBA job versus her job, but she's positioned that program to be able to win national championships on an annual basis.
Right.
The Sixers would be a harder threshold to go win an NBA championship to do that, but I think it speaks to the diversity within sports and the opportunities that are there, and we certainly look at it too. Like we like to take pride at Furman that there's a development process from within, and we're watching. We've been watching Pierre for the last several years, in addition to other coaches, because you're just saying, when's their time coming? And it's really hard to get a head coaching job. Like it's as much as people say it may be easier, this happens. I think it only becomes easier after you've become a head coach. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really hard to get a head coaching job. So it's a great kudos to you that you were prepared, ready, and then the support of the team means the world. I mean, the team, this was important to them, right. And I think in this day of the transfer portal, it says everything, that every member of the team stayed. Every player of the team wanted to be a part of this next legacy of Furman women's basketball. So it's a great credit to you.
I appreciate it. I call them my babies. Those are my babies.
Yeah.
I recruited probably 90% of them, but so their families really well just throughout the recruiting process, and I'm getting texts from moms and dads today, and they're just excited. So I feel the excitement, but again, those are my babies, so I want the best for them, and I just want to take care of them.
Well, let's talk about today. So tonight, 7 o'clock, first game. Any thoughts on the game tonight?
I probably have too many thoughts on the game tonight. I didn't sleep. I put a tweet out that said it was going to be hard for me to sleep, and I didn't sleep, right? It's just, should I do this? Should I draw this up? I think as it gets closer to the game, and I'm gonna shut it down for a second and just try to just relax. But I think tonight will be. It's going to be an exciting game. Asheville's a really gritty team.
Mm-hmm.
They really work hard, well coached, and no matter when we play them, it's always a pretty good game.
Yes.
And so I'm excited to just see how my kids perform and react. I tell them the first couple of minutes they might be a little shaky, getting the nerves out. But as the game goes along, I think you'll see our true identity and what we're really about.
Yeah. The other thing, too, the league is really good right now,
Yeah.
and I think we're as good as any team there. But if you look at the quality of the coaches, you got veteran coaches at Wofford and Mercer. The Chattanooga coach who's a friend of yours just won the championship. Brand new coach, brand new energy. But I think the Southern Conference this year is going to be tough. I think it's going to be a really good, top-heavy conference in terms of competition.
For sure. Yeah, it was hard picking. After 1 and 2, it was hard picking doing the preseason rankings. I was like, it's new kids on the team. Mm-hmm. You have so much respect for the coaches that you're like, okay, no matter who's on their team, they should be good because they can really, really coach. But it was hard to do that. So, night in and night out, you're going to have a battle, and that's what you want, right? This is what you do it for. You don't want to just – obviously it feels good to go and blow everybody out if you could do it, but, everyone knows those battles are what makes – those are the ones you remember, right? I still remember some of my hardest battles in college. Even when I first got into coaching, I tell people, man, we always had battles with like ETSU. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what it was. We always had battles. So you always remember those.
Well, Bob and I were talking in his office yesterday before the men's opener last night, and we were talking just about that thing. They were getting ready to go out and celebrate the ring ceremony and the banner and all of that, and he just brought up that it was the adversity and the pitfalls they faced early in the season that allowed them to flourish and do what they did at the end of the season.
For sure. Yeah, it's and like I said, we're going through some adversity now, but we're gonna fight through it, right? We're gonna fight through it. And shout out to Bob, man. Bob Ritchie, man. He's been really good for me. He'll come in office and we'll just sit down. I'll pop in and be like, hey man, what do you think about this? It's like, how do you do your substitution patterns? Again, I'm an open book, so I just go and ask. And he's had an open door for me, so I appreciate that as well.
Which is awesome. Well, in addition to tonight, we got an exciting season ahead, and part of this is just to encourage all the fans that can come out tonight to support the game. We're expecting a great crowd, and Pierre's going to have a nice Thanksgiving too, because as they're coaching through all this stuff, they're going to wind up in Puerto Rico over Thanksgiving. So it's in a good spot. He's got a good schedule lined up.
Yeah, Puerto Rico's gonna be great. I'm gonna have a good time. I don't know who I only know tonight's game. I don't know. I don't have no clue who we're playing.
Don't worry about it.
But I know no matter who we're playing, we're gonna have a good time.
But you're gonna be in Puerto Rico.
We're gonna be in Puerto Rico for Thanksgiving. So I'm looking forward to that. But first things first, we gotta go out there tonight and put forth a good showing.
Yeah. We're very excited for you, happy for you, proud of you.
That.
So all those things. So
thank you so much.
Best wishes tonight and the whole season.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
All right, Pierre. Thank you.
All right.
As we transition from 3 to 2, I'll just remind you that the SoCon football schedule for this weekend is as follows. And please note this graphic is incorrect because Furman's game with VMI was moved to a 1:30 kickoff. Not 1 o'clock, a 1:30 kickoff. That decision was made yesterday. ETSU's at Western Carolina. That's at 1 o'clock. Wofford at the Citadel at 2 p.m. One of those teams is going to get its first win of the season, not just conference win, but first win overall. And then Samford at Mercer. And suddenly this is a huge game for Mercer as they have kind of hung around now and find themselves perhaps in contention for a playoff spot. So that is a big game for them hosting Samford. All right.
Yeah, Dan, I think that's a good transition for us, too. Number one, just excited for Pierre and this opportunity for them tonight. And if you're tuning in tonight and you've got some time for tonight, I would definitely encourage you to join us 7 o'clock tonight in Timmons Arena. Last night was an exciting start. We had a great crowd. The ring ceremony, the banner ceremony is very special. And first games are going to be first games. They're not always going to be pretty, and that's not the intention for them, but excited to see the team get out there. Both teams are working through health issues, as they typically are at the start of a basketball season, but we're very excited for them. But from my perspective, a couple things I want to share with our fan base because things have been going exceedingly well for all of our teams. This upcoming Friday, and you'll be getting a letter about this later today or tomorrow, but just encouraging our fan base to come out. Men's and women's cross country, 11 straight Southern Conference championships. They're going to be competing in the NCAA regionals in Spartanburg, South Carolina. The women's race goes off at 11. The men's race goes off at 12. Just a great opportunity. If you have time on Friday and you want to see a very unique event competing at the highest possible level of some of the biggest schools in the nation, that'll be this Friday during the day in Spartanburg. That's one thing. The second thing is we've got a huge men's basketball game on Friday against Belmont, and we are close to a sellout, and we would encourage you to get your tickets and be a part of Friday night, but a big game for the team. Friday night, 7 o'clock in Timmons Arena against Belmont. And then Saturday, senior day for football, and you mentioned that there's a time change, and the time change is really to accommodate our senior class. We've got senior day, 1 o'clock, military appreciation day, faculty and staff appreciation day. We've got a lot of different things happening at the same time. But for anyone that can be here to really thank this championship class, this championship team, we're going to honor our seniors at 1 o'clock, and then 1:30 we'll have kickoff for the football game. And then in a really surprising turn of events, we were able to host the Southern Conference Soccer Championship game on Sunday at 2 o'clock. Furman has been playing really, really great soccer down the stretch here as they've gotten healthy and as the team has done really well. And then by virtue of the other side of the bracket, we've beaten all the teams, or the teams on the higher side of the bracket have been eliminated, which allows us to host the championship game for soccer on Sunday. So that's a big call to action for anyone that has time on Sunday. As much fan support, as much student support as we can have, as much alumni support as we can have, but a chance to go to the NCAA. So we've got 2 teams in the NCAA on Friday. We got a third one on Sunday with a chance to be in the NCAA. So things at football, NCAA, FCS playoffs. So we couldn't be prouder of what's taking place right now, and things are going really good.
Busy week. FurmanPaladins.com for your tickets, or 294-3099. There you go, Dwight.
Yeah. So then one of the things that we try to do for this particular show, we always take questions and kind of call it the Ask the AD segment, and Dan's got all kinds of great questions. One of the things I really appreciate about Dan is the depth of the questions that he asks our staff and all the different people around us and the work that he does. Dan's got busy season now. He's got to balance both football and basketball, and I don't know how he's going to do it because some of the things overlap and it might not be physically possible to do them all. But we use this segment as an opportunity to go through some questions and really try to have some outreach for our fans. So we're going to go through things that you have asked, and Dan tries to prepare me a day or so in advance, but we'll go through some things. And Dan, what do you got for this segment?
I know there were 3 main topics that you wanted to get to, and we've had so many questions that were submitted this time. And just a little caveat here, we requested questions that had not been asked before, so we're not addressing the same things over and over again. So if we don't get to all of them now, trust me, there are plenty of them to hold over for another show. But this is actually one you sent me. I had not seen this question, but it was a question that involves baseball here at Furman. And the person who submitted the question said that while they were, and I'm paraphrasing because the question, it was about that long, but the basic premise was they thought that cutting baseball was a mistake. They still think that cutting baseball was a mistake. But inside of that, the financial perhaps redistribution to football and basketball, did that happen? Has that played a role in the success we've seen with Clay's teams and with Bob's team? That's way above my pay grade, so I'm just going to let you take off with that.
My staff sent me that question this morning, and I forwarded it on to you, and I think it's a really good question because I think it speaks to a larger piece when you're trying to figure out Furman athletics. So I start off with the question as being a question of strength. You know, I think the positive about the question is that we're saying that because our football and basketball teams are doing so well and other teams are doing so well, when you go through a process of making the cuts, how did that impact some of these things that take place? I don't think any institution wants to make cuts, nor did we. And if you take it back to 2020 when the pandemic hit, we were asked to make a 25% reduction in our department. And if you think about your household income, you know, if you were asked to take a 25% cut, if you think about your business, if you were asked to take a 25% cut, it's almost unfathomable when you think about what you're trying to do. It means that instead of operating at a 100% of what you think you'd have, you'd be operating at 75% of what you had. And if this question in particular is saying not liking the cuts, and get that and understand that, but what was the thought process around trying to make decisions? I think one of the things that's really intelligent about this question is that we did go into this process, and I had declared this even before the pandemic, that one of the responsibilities that we had as an athletic department was to really put the resources towards the revenue sports where they needed to be. So we'll use the saying that everyone's status is the same, everyone's role is different, but part of the change that I really felt from day one in terms of coming into Furman is that I was openly declaring we have to focus on these revenue generation sports such as football and basketball, and both can be successful in the model that we have. And what that requires in the model is just tremendous support when it comes to fundraising, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to tickets, when it comes to revenue, when it comes to engagement. And I think what you're seeing now with the championship football team and a championship basketball team, Furman was the only university in the nation to have an FCS win last year, an NCAA tournament win last year, which is really remarkable. The only one in the nation to be able to do that. Now, as we went through that process and as we were being asked to do cuts, you can look at a decision like that and say, all right, it's a 25% cut. How do you distribute this evenly across the board? How do you take this across your athletic department? The hard part when you're talking about $5 million on a $20 million budget, there's just not enough money to equally distribute it around when you go around. So some of our thought process was, as we go through these cuts and as we go through this process, we've got to do whatever it takes to protect the 18 sports that would remain in terms of what we were going to do and how we were going to go about that. Protecting resources for basketball and for football was really important to us. It was important to our trustees. It was important to our sports. Those sports, everyone took a hit in some way or another. But the ability for us to keep the status quo and then be able to build a model around that supports them is what's allowed us to do that. We were intentionally, one of the things I noticed on day one of the job is that basketball was underfunded. So if you look at the ROI on basketball and where they were, so we had already begun the process of making some strategic adjustments around the basketball program, around our coaching staff, around our operations, around our everything we've done to try to help basketball retain. And I think one of the biggest things you look at is we've been able to successfully retain Bob Ritchie and his coaching staff. We've been able to retain our players in terms of being a part of this program. We've been able to retain Clay Hendricks. We've been able to bring in top-notch coaches and retain players. So when you look at a 94% retention rate amongst our student athletes and you look at a high level of success and you look at investment, it's not just institutional investment. It's also fundraising investment that's a part of it. The hardest part about baseball is baseball, costing probably $1 million a year when you look at a program. It's such a hard cut that quite honestly, no one at Furman wanted to go through. But there is a certain point with Title IX and finances, you run out of options. So one of the things that we've done with baseball is we have left the stadium. We have left the field. We've openly stated in our intentions we'd love to bring baseball back at some point. And that's something we've been working on. But it has to fit within an institutional structure, meaning that it's got to fit with finance. It's got to fit with student life. It's got to fit with strategies around enrollment. It's got to fit with all the things that we do with our trustees and our leadership, and it's got to fit with our strategic plan. So quite often when I go to events, I just expect it. And when I do a public event and I'm on the road, one of the number one questions we get is, what about baseball? And we've said openly that it's our desire at some point to bring it back. But bringing it back can't come at the compromise of the sports that we have here. We've got to be able to bring it back in a way that is, number one, we can afford it. Number two, it's equitable. We're going to have to balance that is making sure that we're prepared for opportunities not just for males but also for females. But I think the genesis of this question is a really smart question, because I think the person that's asking the question is saying, hey, I don't like the decision, but on the back end, if you look at it 4 years later, I can see some of the positives that may have came out of a negative situation. Positives being we've prepared everyone else to be successful in the space that they are. Positives being that we've been able to build a fundraising model to support their continued success. Negative is that we don't have one of our core teams that we'd love to have. And I've said it publicly, you and I have talked about it privately, that I think having baseball back as one of our sports would be an important addition. And I think we need to give it the time it deserves to allow the institution to bring it back. But anything from your perspective further as we're going through, because we haven't really talked about that.
No, you actually caught me well off guard with that question, because every time we put these out, there's always the question about, well, when's baseball coming back, or what about baseball? And quite honestly, I've quit bringing it up because it gets thrown out every time, and people know my feelings about baseball here, but now you really caught me off guard this morning when you sent me this.
Yeah, no, I think it's good and healthy to talk about it. And I think I look at the timeline as indefinite because it's not based on anything that we're doing. There's no magic thing that we could do, with the exception of someone throwing a ton of money at us and saying, hey, do this now. Well, yeah, we'll do it now. If the resources are there immediately, it's got to be strategic. It's got to fit all the different things we do. I definitely think it fits. I don't think there's ever been a part of me, even since the beginning of this process, that ever wanted to not be there. I think what we have to look at is the Furman that we want our Furman to be, and say, okay, where are the spaces that we're doing really well? What are the things we can impact? I do think we have an exceptional athletic department. I do think that we have a unique athletic department that understands, as important as football and basketball is, we're also supporting our cross-country track and field program at a high level, and our golf program, and our tennis program, and our soccer program, and distributing across the board at a high level. But we have seen tremendous outreach from our donors. And this is one thing I will tell you. I got here in August of 19. We hit a pandemic 6 months later. Had I been here longer, I don't think some of these things might have happened because we as an athletic department had to be able to show our administration, our trustees, our community what success looks like and how to pay for it, how to fund it. And that narrative wasn't here when I got here. There was a lot of things that we had to adjust and attack. And just because we're doing well doesn't mean we're always going to be doing well. Just because everyone's going great right now doesn't mean it's always going to be that way because there's a lot of hurdles to overcome. But I do think given the time, I never got to baseball season. I think we maybe were 6 or 7 games in when March, mid-March hit and the pandemic hit. I think if you give us a little bit more time, I think it might have been a different outlook because the university has embraced the model. They've embraced the culture. They've embraced the opportunities and the challenges. And I think part of what I really like to do here at Furman is be transparent, open, honest, and say, here are the challenges. How can you help us meet these challenges? Everyone we've asked for help along the way has found a way to help. And I think part of the reason that basketball, football, and some of these other sports are surging forward is that there's been a lot of people stepping up to support that initiative. Men's golf's an example. Men's golf was before I got here, was cut. They were gone, and they were brought back through a group of donors who believed in the program. And now you look at Matt Davidson taking his team out there. They win the Furman Intercollegiate. They beat nationally ranked teams. They were in the NCAAs last year. They sent Sam Lape to the NCAA championships. We got a coach that played here as one of the best golfers of all time. And we've got an alumni group that is aggressive with their fundraising and committed to a model. And what we're trying to do is build sustainable sports. And we're going to have to look at baseball the same way. There'll be a day where the question and the conversation will come back, and we're going to have to be able to have that outlook and that conversation. And I know it's challenging, but I also can see a future at Furman that potentially more sports here may support the institution at a higher level. We're one of the things in this role for me is that I can't just think about the athletic department in a silo. We've got to think about what's the impact of the athletic department on the greater good of this community and how do we help Furman. And I think if you look at the strategic things that have taken place with students, enrollment, with advancement, with finance, I think communications, there's so many things we can do to help this campus. And I think considering other models based on other peer sets are really important. So I think if you look at where we are at Furman right now, we're in a really good position to answer that question and address the future.
All right. At the risk of putting my job on the line here.
Uh-oh. Don't do that, Dan, because we love you.
I spent 11 years as a sports editor, so the journalist in me heard you say something, and I can't let it go without following up.
That's why I love you.
You said, unless someone threw a ton of money at it, and we would do it now. Can you put a dollar figure on a quote-unquote ton of money?
Yeah, I don't think I could put a dollar figure on a ton of money, but I would say a Ravenel Curry type gift. I mean, this is the beauty of being and I've said this in our department meetings, the beauty of being at a small private college is that the impact of dollars can change everything. And, as we went through that process, the hardest part about the baseball process is they were not given a chance to fundraise to keep that sport. And what I mean by that is that the university's financial issues were such that at that time, unless it was a $10 million gift of cash, it wasn't going to be enough to save it. The university had to cut expenses. We had to cut 25% of our budget. There was no choice in that matter. I will tell you, if right now the door was a knock on the door and someone gave us a check for $10 million, you would see a baseball team out there. Now, you'd also see a women's sport. And I think that's part of the challenge, that you'd have to not only bring in a men's sport, you have to see a women's sport, but the impact of philanthropy at a small college such as ours has a chance to have a transformative effect in terms of what we're doing. And if you look at a philanthropist like Ravenel Curry, what he's doing for this basketball program, he's accelerating them forward to new opportunities. You look at someone like a Chris Bork around the cross-country track and field program, what he's been able to do with them. You look at 2 top 25 programs that are influenced by a donor. Yes, that support would happen, and that would accelerate the process. So that is a reality. That's part of the reality of the next phase of where we're going as an athletic department, that if the dollars are there, it would certainly generate the interest in doing those things and the ability to get those things done. So one of the things I do love about being at a private school is that money does matter. So if the money is there and finance, it's mostly like you look at it like, what are the issues? What would be a reason why not? Well, there's reasons to do it. There's history, there's tradition, there's facilities, there's an alumni base. The issue is money. So if you take away money off a part of that issue, and then you got to figure out Title IX and sports supervision and figure out all those other things that you're going to figure out in terms of the whole thing, then you're eliminating the issue that would prevent you from having that happen. But good question, because you're asking the right one. Does that mean you're ready to make a big commitment, Dan?
I think I've got $10 in my wallet. I can get it started, but at least now you know. A couple of other topics you wanted to get to before we get to any questions, and we're already pushing toward the hour mark. But the FCS playoffs are coming up, and barring a collapse of biblical proportions here in the last 2 weeks, Furman is going to be in line to host multiple rounds. And in fact, if they stayed the number 2 seed and continued to win, they wouldn't have to play a road game until a national championship game. So as you're looking at the FCS playoff picture and how it could impact us here, what is the operating philosophy right now?
Yeah, the operating philosophy is to try to do whatever it takes to have home games throughout until we can go no further with home games. I think the challenge, the reason I want to share this with the public, is that the FCS committee still had some challenges in terms of how they're organized, what they do. One of the more interesting things is right before the start of the season, they were talking about redoing the seeding system so it would be seeded on the top 16 as opposed to the top 8. We are very fortunate right now, and I think it was going to require one more win at a minimum, to maintain that top 8 status, and then that top 8 status by which would allow us to have a bye over Thanksgiving weekend, would allow us then to host the first weekend in December as a part of that process, and then we've bid out to continue to do that. The things that make me nervous with the FCS sometimes are the things that you don't know and what happens in a committee meeting that we're not a part of. I am a part of the regional advisory committee, so each week I sit on a panel of athletic directors where we recommend schools from our region, being the southern region, to be a part of that in terms of where that process is. And then our votes get passed on to the NCAA committee. So they attend our meetings. They have the data. They have the data points. Furman has been positioned throughout the whole process as the top of that list throughout the whole time. And I think that's the benefit of winning year over year, is that you get a lot of credit for what you did last year. It rolls into the next year when you return the team. When you're consistent and you're winning the whole way, we're in a really good spot. So the goal here is, and this is where we need the fan support on Saturday, is go beat VMI, be the outright champions in the Southern Conference. We already had the AQ. Let's lock up a bye, with another win in terms of having the opportunity for us to skip 1 week in the playoffs and then to be able to host from that point forward. And then the goal, and this the reason we want to share it with our fan base, is we want to host each weekend from that point forward until we get into the championship game situation. The only group that gives me any sense of nervousness just in terms of how they're positioned is the groups from the Northwest, this Big Sky group, and you're talking about the Dakotas and Montana and all that group. And then hopefully some of them winning against each other. They've got some key games that are still coming up. Is that group when we look at like who's the Final Four, who's the person that has that seed, who's the one that winds up in that situation. So as much as we're enjoying the success of winning the Southern Conference Championship and being undefeated in the conference, being undefeated with the exception of South Carolina, I still think these 2 games really matter. And I think these games matter for seeding. I think these games matter for health. I think these games matter for our ability to continue to go deep into December. And it's also nice you get a bye to come back healthy, if that can hopefully help some of the guys that are banged up. You look at Travis Blackshear. Travis missed 2 games and came back and had the interception of the year, to position us to come back and make that run. So it's an exciting time. But I am excited for our fan base, and I hope everyone tunes in for this run in the FCS playoffs.
State of the NCAA. Do we have enough time to even cover that topic?
We don't. And the only reason I even brought it up, this was the only thing I brought to the table, is I do think our fan base is going to continue to watch the state of the NCAA with all the different things that are taking place, and there is a lot. I think the role of an athletic director, I know a lot of the questions that we have, a lot of them are about marketing, a lot of them are about infrastructure questions. I think they're all really good questions, and happy to engage in those questions. But the biggest pressing thing that is facing NCAA, Furman, the Southern Conference is just the state of the NCAA. And there's a lot of legislation. There are a lot of court cases taking place. There's a lot of different things that our new president, Charlie Baker, has been focused on. There was an interesting ruling just last week, the House ruling that came out that basically said that, you're talking about money that had not been distributed before for NIL for student athletes that would need to be redistributed from the Power 5 conferences. And you're talking about billions of dollars that would need to be back payments for payments that weren't made. There's some legislation out there that is game-changing effect potentially on the NCAA. Everything that's going on, everything from revenue distribution to NIL to student athletes as employees is what we're dealing with at a national and conference level. Those are the real issues that are out there. And they're really interesting. I think the group that's most affected by these right now is the Power 5. And then what is the impact on the Power 5 if those things go through or if legislation changes? So I just share that because there are certainly contemporary topics that are out there. There's certain things that we keep track of on a daily basis, sometimes hourly basis in terms of how things are going. But there is a lot going on with the NCAA. And I think the next couple of years are going to be really interesting is probably the word to see how this all shakes out.
Yeah, there were, 3 different major lawsuits that are out there right now that could really change. I mean, you think that the face of the NCAA has changed in the last 4 or 5 years? Well, depending on what happens with these lawsuits, I mean, it could be unprecedented.
Well, the concept of amateurism has changed, and I think that if you go back – 10 years ago, the concept of amateurism was there, and student athletes were truly student athletes, and a lot's changed. A lot's changed for good, but a lot has changed because of because of lawsuits. A lot has changed because the times have changed. A lot has changed with a different educated student base in terms of what their opportunities are. But I'll also tell you that for example, they passed name, image, and likeness back in 2020, but I don't think they were worried about having lawsuits that would take them back to 2016, for back payments. So there's just a lot out there, and it makes me thankful to be at Furman to have a really secure plan and understanding what we're going to do. But I think it'd be lost on our fans if we didn't say. I mean, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of apprehension about what the future is going to be like for a lot of different sports in terms of how this impacts the future of where we are. So a lot of things when you look at what's Furman doing here, what are we doing there, when we're talking about marketing, we're also talking about, where we're positioned, and what we're going to look like and what we're trying to get done.
Can we place blame, and we'll move on after this, but can we place a good deal of the blame on short-sightedness or stubbornness even on the NCAA's part? Because, you go back years, if you were an Olympian as a collegiate athlete, but you were good enough to get on a United States Olympic team, then there were certain things you could do that other student athletes could not do when it came to name, image, and likeness. Before that terminology was ever even out there, it was okay if you were an Olympian. It was not okay if you were playing college football or college basketball. Short-sightedness on the NCAA, has that brought us to this point?
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be short-sightedness as much as I would just say that the business model has grown exponentially over the last 20 years. And I think that, if you look at what the NCAA tournament looks like now as opposed to 30 years ago, and the impact of ESPN, the impact of cable networks, the impact of TV contracts, I think sports has become big business, and I think it's gotten bigger and bigger each year. And I think what's happened is that within the business, to your point about stubbornness or adaptability, is that the money that was coming in, as the money kept going up and up and up, as opposed to you look at where the professional leagues are, there's a revenue share, the better the league does. And so it goes back to Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and the NBA explodes. Well, they figured out not only are we going to explode with the owners, but the players are going to get a hand in this. Baseball's gone through that. how are we distributing revenues? But in college, the revenues haven't been distributed. The revenues have gone to the schools, the revenues have gone to the coaches, the revenues have gone to administrators in many cases. We don't operate that way at Furman. We're not in that revenue situation.
But that's why you're hearing, like we saw all last summer, are Clemson and Florida State going to leave the ACC for a bigger paycheck commensurate with what the Big Ten and the SEC are getting?
Yeah. I do think 5 to 10 years from now, that level of college football is going to look different. And is it sooner than that? It could be. But I think what you're looking at there, that model is going to look differently. And I think anyone that's telling you otherwise is blind to where this is headed. Because it can be operated at such a level and the rules of the game can be different. And I think it's going to take some really strong leadership to really rein it in to figure out what it is. I think my hope is that for as much as we can, outside of that level of football, and this is where I think FCS is really a model, if we can keep as much of the other stuff underneath the same umbrella that we're all operating from an NCAA model, I think that would be a positive, because I think some of the risk when you look at the amount of money, when you look at Title IX, when you look at labor laws, when they look at employees, that could look totally different. But if that impacts all of this, the whole thing looks different. And I think we've got to get to the point of almost separating these different things, that if there's that much money and that much going on around that level of football, we almost have to treat the rest of it separate and figure out what that's going to be. But it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out, because it's going to shake out, and it's coming down the pike.
All right, let's try to get to 4 or 5 of these questions, and we can hold the rest of them over for a future edition. But, again, I'm kind of cognizant about attention spans, and when we get to that hour point, I think maybe attention spans start to wane a little bit. But one of the first questions that was submitted was your thoughts or reactions on the decision that the NIT folks made last week that basically takes away a conference champion who doesn't win a regular season champion who doesn't win their conference tournament, not getting the bid. And just looking at it from a skeptical standpoint, you had 3 non-Power 5s make the Final Four last year, and a non-Power 5 won it. And so is that what precipitated this?
Yes, and then there's another thing that precipitated, which is Fox beginning to put a tournament together for the schools that didn't get into the NCAA tournament. And actually, this is a great segue for the last conversation that we just had about where is the state of the NCAA and where is this all headed. Because, so from our perspective, we are disappointed for mid-major basketball that we lose an opportunity. But in the real sense of here, this is just the reality. This is the reality of what this is going to be, and it's an example of where this is going. If you look at the NCAA tournament, the model in terms of what they've built, and in the NIT was the next tournament, but it's being threatened by another tournament that would conceivably take some of those teams that would normally go to the NIT and bring them over there. So this is the NCAA's response to say, how do we have the NIT be a stronger field in terms of engagement, in terms of money, in terms of viewership, all those things. And this is the challenge that we're going to face at this mid-major level. It would be less opportunities that would be available to us. Now, the flip side of that for Furman, which Bob and I have talked about, is that if you go back 2 years ago when Chattanooga hit the shot and knocked us out. So that shot not only knocked us out of the NCAA tournament, it also knocked us out of conceivably the NIT, because you think about it that, we would have been an NCAA tournament team to go in, and had Chattanooga not had the regular season, maybe we would have had an NIT opportunity. So in some ways it could have knocked us out of 2 different opportunities. If you look at the new model and you're taking the best teams, let's say you're not taking all these other conference championships, the one upside for us at Furman is if we do have a really good team and we do have our score high enough in the net, then we may be able to gain some outright opportunities for Furman, which could be a positive for us. So if we continue to build a great basketball program, we continue to be a program on the rise, you could have made an argument in that year that maybe we might have been on the inside instead of being on the outside looking in. Some of the schools that would take a seed, you might have a school in another conference that didn't get in the NCAA tournament, but they held on to their regular season. They got to go to the NIT, but we didn't get to go, but we might have been a better team than them. So there may be another way to look at this that may be a positive for us with Furman, but the reality of the NIT is not changing because of the NIT. The NIT is changing because Fox was coming up with a plan to go get those next schools. And I think for us at the mid-major level, we've got to continue to be competitive in our thinking about where we're going and what we're trying to get done. But that's that's where I'm at with it. That's where Coach Ritchie's at on the NIT.
And if you want to look at it this way, it's another battle between Fox and ESPN.
Yes.
Because ESPN has taken over
The
basically
NIT.
the NIT.
Yeah.
And this is Fox trying to challenge that. So
Yeah.
the evils of television. It's got its good and its bad. SoCon tournament under contract in Asheville through 2026.
Yep.
Can, the question says, we get Greenville to put together a package to get the tournament here?
Yeah, so I love Greenville, and I love our partnership with the Bon Scores Wellness Arena, and I've brought this up before. So I've said that I think that if you look at what that arena has to offer and what the city has to offer, that would be a great location to play the Southern Conference tournament. Now we do enjoy Asheville. We do appreciate the regionality of Asheville. It's an easy place to get to for our fans, and we have a lot of fun in Asheville. But at the same time, comparing arenas, this arena that we have here in Greenville is a high-quality arena. The challenge is actually not the Southern Conference getting it. The challenge is the fact that the SEC have figured out this is a phenomenal location to host their women's tournament, which includes South Carolina, which includes LSU, which includes Tennessee. And they've done incredibly well. So the city of Greenville has been very happy with the return that they've got by hosting the SEC women's tournament in Greenville. So really more of the question would be not as much what would the SoCon do, it would be what would the SEC do, because they've got that contract right now and they're doing really well there. If the opportunity would present itself for us to have a chance to do that, I wouldn't hesitate to push for that as an opportunity. But I do think our partners in Asheville have been really good. I mean, Asheville's gone out of their way to host the Southern Conference tournament. They want it. They've been aggressive with it. It's been a great neutral city for all the teams that are involved. But I would be an advocate to look at Greenville. I think it's a phenomenal place to host a basketball tournament and a phenomenal city to do that as well.
Question that I got yelled at a little bit for not bringing up on the last one, so I'll bring it up here. Can we have all Furman sports podcasts and videos available across all platforms? Basically taking what we're doing with this video and making it available in audio-only podcast form through iTunes, Google Play, all of that stuff. I guess the answer to that would be yes, we can, but the other question is who's going to do it.
Yeah. So actually, I'm glad someone asked this question, because this has been my question to our staff.
Uh-huh.
I've asked the same question because I think the content that you bring to the table for Furman Athletics is phenomenal, and I think what you do in terms of a podcast deserves to be on a larger medium. So I'm a big supporter of this, and I actually would love to see this happen for Furman. I think this is similar to like when people talk about the newspaper thing, like when you're talking about like what's Greenville news and how do we all figure into this. This comes back to, according to our staff, it comes back to content, it comes back to opportunities, and it comes back to viewership. If we can continue to build our brand and continue to have national success and continue to build these things, I think this is a natural place of where we're going to go. I don't think we may be at the point viewership or opportunities to promote these things that we've done. That's why we're making the effort to make this bigger. Mm-hmm. To me, this fits into the category of more fans, more attendance, more revenue, more opportunities, more exposure. It's the same thing with Greenville News. When you hear about, we've got a trustee that's really mad at the Greenville News right now. He's like, I just don't understand. I feel the same way. Like, how do you not have the Western Furman game in Greenville News? How do you not, focus on the Southern Conference Championship of football? There's so many things that should be in there. The way things are run these days, it comes back to hits, and it comes back to media, and it comes back to the number of times people hit that station. So whether it's news or whether it's radio, we've got to continue to promote our brand and get more and more viewership so that it gets to that level of platform and gets to that level of opportunity. We would also consider investing in this. This is something that we would consider investing, same with the news, if there's an opportunity and a breakthrough. But I think what you do for us at Furman would fit great on an Apple podcast, a Spotify, because I do it when I'm on a long trip like Chattanooga. I'm trying to find a great podcast, or I'm trying to find some content out there, or friends are recommending things. But I do think what we're doing right here in this broadcast booth would be great on those platforms.
Well, let me tell you, you want to talk about investment? Because I do a personal podcast on another portion of my life and what I do from a Christian standpoint. You can get it on every podcast platform out there for the grand total of $14 a month.
Let's figure that out.
And so I know we can afford $14 a month.
So the answer to this question is Dan may be in charge of getting this done, which is great, because part of this, and this is where Dan's value is really great for us, is that we are not the experts in every aspect of these things, but the fact that you know that, let's do it. Yeah. Let's figure this out.
Okay. Let's see. How can we enhance student support at Timmons Arena? Last night, student support was pretty good. Yeah. I guess what you're looking for is consistency.
Yeah, I think student support's been great and growing. We were really encouraged that last night there were so many students that they spilled over from the student section into other sections, and they were just taking open seats, including mine. I mean, it was great that there was so many students that are there. But the students being a part of Furman basketball, Furman football, and all of our events is certainly a priority for us. We do a number of things throughout the year to engage them and to pull them in, and that's the goal. So having a game like we had yesterday, having a game like this upcoming Friday with Belmont, having a great student support that we've had at football games. The student interest in animals different than it was when we were in school. It's different than when we were all in school. The reality is that their academic challenges are real challenges. Like students at Furman, they study, they're in the library, they got a lot going on. So I do think timing of a game is important. I do think weekends are greater opportunities than weekdays for what we're doing. But our staff, our marketing staff, Coach Ritchie, all of our people are working very closely with the students to generate that interest. We do have a new student group, the Purple Haze, that are working to gather some interest and continue to push things forward. But we will do anything we can with our students to promote their engagement, to get them involved. I thought DJ Nate did a great job at the game yesterday, making it fun. But when we look at the schedule throughout the year, we do look at how do we build consistent student support, and we know when the trend line is up versus the trend line is down. I will tell you, as we get into finals, it is really difficult to get students out during finals. It is really difficult during winter break because they're not here, in terms of those things. But outside of that, we work extremely hard to get our students to be here and be here consistently.
Which is why it will be a really good thing if we have a bye for football over Thanksgiving weekend and don't play again until December the 2nd.
Yeah.
And what would be the second round of the playoffs, because we played Thanksgiving last year, the students weren't here on campus.
Yeah, and then we're going through the same thing. Like you don't want to play over Thanksgiving week because nobody's here. Our students are gone, and then the other side, the staffing side, is we're having to remind staff that don't go too far because we may have a game over Thanksgiving. But the flip side of that too is that when you get to the first weekend of September, we got a great weekend. We got men's basketball at Princeton, men's basketball at Arkansas on a Monday.
First week of December.
First weekend of December,
Yeah.
sorry. And but we're going to host a football game here, so we're going to be divide and conquer in terms of the energies and people. But we're going to do the best we can to continue to support our football program. And I've been extremely encouraged with the student turnout for athletic events in the last year. I think it's been great. There's definitely buzz. I mean, the things that we've done, such as the pep rallies or the hoops night, like everything's a growth proposition, and it's been fun. But I do think we're moving in the right direction.
All right, let's try to get two more in.
Yep.
Very quickly. What kind of NIL pitches do prospective student athletes receive while at Furman?
This goes back to the similar question we're talking about with branding and Spotify and in the newspaper. It goes back to what is your volume that you have as you're coming in as a student. So if you're an incredible gymnast, if you're an incredible basketball player, football player, if you have X amount of social media following on the way in, you're going to have more opportunities when it comes to name brand, name, image, and likeness. We do have students that have name, image, and likeness deals. They range. They can range from anything from $50 of free meals to a really significant contract that's got to get negotiated, and they got to get lawyers involved as part of that process. I think there's a full range of different things. You've got students that are on platforms because they're promoting restaurants, or they're promoting gear, or they're promoting community outreach initiatives. And you've got students that have a more defined name, image, and likeness program that works with a company, or works with community activism, or works with their branding, all those different things. So I think the range is definitely there. The range for mid-major athletics is certainly more with basketball. I'd say that's predominantly the space that you're going to see more of that. With which college athletics, you're going to see a lot more. You've seen these examples with football, women's basketball at that SEC level. You've seen the examples with gymnastics, basketball, women's basketball. So I do think there's a wide range that's out there, but the predominant part for us is mostly football, mostly basketball, football, and some minor deals that are out there. But name, image, and likeness is not moving the needle as much for us as you may think. It does have an impact on a select few, but not as much as you think at our level.
Final question, with VMI coming in this week and the expectation that they won't be traveling with a whole lot of people, the question was put up, hey, can we find a way to just give tickets away to Greenville County school kids, police, firefighters, medical personnel, teachers, church groups, to get that other side of the stadium full?
Yeah, the answer is yes. And my philosophy with any game that we have is that there's tickets available until we're sold out. And what I mean by that is that if there's ever a group that you work with, or there's an initiative that you want to bring people in, we will work with any group, and we've had these conversations with all these different groups that are listed here when it comes to Greenville County about activating their base and bringing people in. So we'll partner with anyone. For example, if you want to bring your church and there's an opportunity to activate all of them, if you want to bring your community service outreach group, if you want to bring the veterans, if you want anything that you have, the only thing that we ask as a part of that process that we'll facilitate is usually access to that database. Like we want to be able to share information with them in the future, which is more of a structural thing for our ticketing staff. But we need to have fulfillment, meaning that if you're going to ask for the tickets, then we ask that the seats are fulfilled as a part of that process. Sometimes just giving things away does not resonate because you don't get the return in terms of what you're trying to do.
Right.
The other thing, too, is we do have paying customers that have given a great value to their tickets, so we don't want to devalue the tickets such that the tickets don't have the value. But we're open to anything. For us to get to the point of having a sold-out stadium is one of the goals, and to get to that point, I couldn't have been happier family weekend, homecoming, recent games in terms of where we are from attendance. It was interesting at Chattanooga that when I got back, everybody's like, wow, it didn't seem like there was many people there. I said, there were. I said, they just were all on the camera side. The whole side, the camera side, all the suites that they had, and our Furman fans were on the other side with the band, the visiting team band. They had a great crowd. Just football capacity these days is not going to necessarily be as big as you might think. It's going to be the size and scale. But we're open to any marketing opportunity that's out there that our fan base wants to join and our fan base wants to participate. The other question that was out there I wanted to answer is the Western thing. We were sorry that Western couldn't produce that game. It was a great boon for you.
Yes. People discovered or rediscovered there's this old-fashioned thing called radio.
Well, I enjoyed I love listening to games on radio, and to me, I could see the whole game through your voice and vision. So I don't need even to see it on TV when you're broadcasting. But Western had a technical issue, meaning the game in the box was getting filmed and the game was being broadcast to a certain point, and then it got to a point of connection. They weren't able to broadcast and connect back to ESPN. Unfortunately, they had a staff member that was with them up until Wednesday of that week, and he wasn't there for that anymore, and that's one of the big losses at this level. If you lose the wrong staff member that has all the technical skills, that kind of issue could happen because there's nobody to back that person up. So the reality is the game was getting broadcast. There was a crew there. There were cameras. I didn't even know there was an issue. I was down on the field until the first quarter. Someone sent me a text. What's wrong with the broadcast? I don't know because we were at the game. But that was the issue. It was a technical issue connecting back to ESPN so they could broadcast it. So we did have a copy of the game. We did distribute it on YouTube through our football channel. But I definitely know the bummer on that because that was an incredible game to be a part of and see.
We covered a lot of ground today.
We did good.
Yeah.
We did great.
I think we even got to most of the questions. So with that, just remind you, if you are checking this out shortly after release here on Tuesday afternoon, Pierre Curtis, who was with us in the first half of the show, his women's team's making its season debut tonight and his head coaching debut, hosting Asheville at 7 o'clock at Timmons. So we'd love to see you there.
Yeah, great weekend ahead. We'd love to see it cross country. We'd love to see it basketball. We'd love to see it football. And love to see it soccer. And we're grateful for your support, and we wish you all the best for a happy Thanksgiving. And look forward to seeing you soon.
All right, Jason, thank you very much. That'll take care of this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. We will talk to you again next week. Until then, for Jason, for Pierre, I'm Dan Scott saying God bless you. So long, everybody.